Hi everyone, my name is Ryan, and for my final comprehensive wiki, I decided what I was going to do was take like a theme that we took different aspects of every chapter, and I found that every single chapter covered at least one thing related to patriarchy. So my final wiki is going to be on the concept of patriarchy. So to begin, in chapter 2, we discussed gender binary glasses and how everybody sees in America through these gender binary glasses where we identify things as either masculine or feminine, which basically kind of starts this whole process of categorizing things and making men be at the top. Um, and in chapter 3 and 4, we see that in chapter 3, we discuss the differences between observed differences, which we would equate to biological sex, versus learned differences, which is usually the cultural aspect of masculinity and femininity. And in chapter 4, we see how gender policing can affect people's ideas of what is masculine and what is feminine, where men are not always allowed to wear dresses or wear makeup, wherein women sometimes are not allowed to wear like things that are considered boy clothes or boy colors or do things that are like boy like hobbies or whatever. And that kind of puts it kind of, as we grow up, we kind of now see that there's more defined roles in society, and it kind of puts a lot of like the more positive stuff or seemingly more desirable things in the masculine category. And then obviously in chapter 5, we throw in that also for women of color in this intersectionality also have to deal with not only being a woman in a man's world, but also being a person of color, which obviously increases more of the difficulties. And then in chapter 6, then in chapter, hello? Oh, sorry. And then in chapter 6, we see this idea of hegemonic masculinity, which is essentially this idea of like the perfect person. So the perfect person in society is a white male who is Christian, who is like good in the bedroom, loyal to a family, makes a lot of money, they're strong, they have character, like all these things. And that is seen by both men and women as being the most desirable person. And the fact that this person is indeed a male kind of shows that like that we all live in a patriarchal society. And also on the flip side, where if a woman is displaying something or is displaying characteristics that are considered more masculine, she has to do what's called a feminine apologetic, which is essentially compensate by doing something that is equally as feminine. So like, let's just say that there is a female athlete such as like Serena Williams, who is very muscular and considered very masculine and dedicated to her sport. She may have to wear like makeup even though she doesn't want to possibly kind of appear as she is still considered like a woman by society standards. And then kind of staying on the lines of sports. In chapter 8, we kind of talked about how the culture we live in the United States idealizes sports that are inherently exemplify things that people who are biologically males tend to succeed in more than women. Whereas it doesn't mean that men are technically better athletes. Whereas if you decided that, like, let's just say gymnastics was the most popular sport in America, we may see that there is an equal number of women capable of being like the best of the best on par with men. But we live in a society where sports like football that obviously are much easier to be the best of the best as a man because you like as a biological male, you tend to gain more muscle mass compared to people who are biologically female. So obviously it is considered a male sport and not a female sport for that reason. And the fact that we value that more than a sport, let's just say like gymnastics, which highlights more like things that women tend to be more, better at than men, it kind of shows that like the patriarchy is also in the entertainment business as well. And then when we go more to how, like, as people get older, we go into this good girl, bad girl dichotomy, which is basically how openly, like, how women express their sexuality. So if women express themselves, like, more sexually, where they may wear, like, more revealing clothing or stuff like that, they are seen as, like, bad or not as desirable or, like, slutty is the common word that is used, and their self-worth is essentially determined on how like innocent they are, but also how attractive they are too. So it's like a double-sided coin that a lot of women have to be on the fence with. And then obviously this kind of like bleeds into chapter 10, where women often will self-objectify themselves and equate their attractiveness to their self-worth, which is obviously not something that like should be any, like no one should be doing that. But some women, their only like goal is to be the most attractive like person out there, and that's like the only thing that they like have a sense of like identity with, which is obviously can create a lot of problems and a lot of anxiety, and like it could cause a lot of hurt for people who aren't like women who maybe not be the most attractive. It doesn't mean that they're terrible people. Like they could be like the smart, like they could be a rocket scientist, but the fact that they may not be as attractive as like a model, that they just feel that they're like not like desirable, which is obviously not true. But in a male dominated society where females worth is more based on their like looks, it obviously puts a lot of women in these unneeded stances. And then when we kind of go into the family unit in chapter 11, we see that a lot of women have to do what's called the second shift, whereas essentially if they're not stay-at-home moms, they go out and work, they tend to be the parent who comes home and does a lot of the housework and a lot of the child care compared to the men. So obviously, like it shows that like women are, not only do they have to deal with a lot more than men do on a daily basis, but they also have to, like they're also like given less of what's it called, like the less of a time off essentially than men. Like men are okay like going to work for like 10 hours and then coming home just to do nothing, whereas obviously as a woman it's less acceptable to do that because we live in a male dominated society. Then when we kind of go to chapter 12, we go to the workplace, where a lot of women experience what is called a glass ceiling, which is essentially this like invisible barrier where it's very difficult for women to get into higher positions of management because that they are in fact women. And obviously if they do happen to obtain that position, they have what's called a glass cliff, which means that they're held on a shorter leash than a man would be, and they have less room for failure until that job like gets taken away from them. So obviously what we can see is that in a patriarchal society that women have like, it's much harder to get to the top, and then when you do get to the top, it's much harder to maintain it than someone who is a male. And then to kind of wrap it all up in chapter 13, we discussed the idea of natal policies, and what a lot of feminists have now tried to push is this thing called gender-aware policymaking, which obviously means that all policies should be taken into account how it would affect both males and females, and not just females, because a lot of times what happens is that these like natal policies, especially ones that prevent people from having multiple children, tend to favor men, because like as we saw with China's one child policy, men were typically favored over like women in terms of having kids. So if they had two kids, they would just get rid of the girl and keep the boy, which obviously caused a major problem in China itself. So what we can see from all these is that we do happen to live in a male-dominated world, unfortunately, but through understanding, compromise, and a better shift towards equality, we can definitely see steps to make within our generation. Obviously, this is not something that could be done overnight, because it's from a long line of patriarchy that was much worse back in the day, and we still have a very strong like patriarchal society today that we just have to slowly ease into a state of equality for both men and women. Well said.
That was really great. I especially liked your well, one thing that really stuck out to me was your discussion of objectification. That is so important, especially since we do live in a patriarchal society, that women are viewed as like objects, and have to do certain things to appear feminine. Like that is so important, and it's so interesting to hear about. So anyway, I'm Joaquina, and for my last wiki, I did something a little bit different. So I covered the hashtag #MeToo movement, and I covered the gender pay gap in previous wikis. But what I noticed was that there seems to be some intertwining between those two topics. So I decided to use this wiki to explore that, since that was really interesting to me. So I'm going to start off with discussing the hashtag #MeToo movement. So that is a movement that basically A bunch of people came forward and talked about their sexual assaults to say, look, you are not alone if this has happened to you. Um, it's unfortunately extremely common for people, and it's horrible. And the hashtag Me Too movement kind of aimed to make the world a safer place for people and hopefully allow people to discuss their assaults, rapes, whatever. Um, However, although the hashtag Me Too movement had such a good idea and, you know, such good intentions, there are some severe consequences that have impacted women. So although maybe it's easier to discuss sexual assaults, it has also become harder for women to get jobs and for women to even be believed sometimes, because unfortunately some people took advantage of the hashtag Me Too movement and used it to further certain agendas that they had or get revenge, and it was horrible. And you know, I even know a few people who were falsely accused, um, and thankfully were proven guilty and nothing ever happened to them. But I couldn't believe that people did that. And I think one of the things that has become kind of a toxic thing is believe all women no matter what, which I think is pretty toxic. I believe in the idea where it's like supporting all women. So if someone says something happened, you know, we're obviously there for them. We listen to them. We help them get to the resources that they need and let them do whatever they want. But we can't just believe people mindlessly. I mean, look what happened with Johnny Depp. He was the one getting abused, and now he lost his movie career. Like, it's horrible. Um, on average, about 2 to 10% of all accusations are false. So what that means is 2 out of every 100 people who are accused are innocent, or it could be 1 in every 10 people that are accused are innocent. You know, that's a significant number of people. So we just need to be more careful. And the reason why I say that is because of the hashtag Me Too movement, men are now afraid to be alone with women in offices, which means that women cannot get mentoring, cannot move up in the workplace. And because of that fear of being accused of sexual assault, women may not be able to be hired as easily because of that stigma that men are just genuinely afraid. And I can't necessarily say that I blame them, but at the same time, you know, that's a unintended and very bad consequence of the hashtag Me Too movement. Going into that, there's also the gender pay gap. And women cannot fix the gender pay gap if they can't get jobs because men are afraid of being accused of sexual assault. And this leads to so many other things, such as women not being able to have children or women not being able to do certain things with their life that they may want to. For example, even in California, where the pay gap is like is low, which is like, I think they make 88 cents per every dollar, which is the best, but still horrible. Um, for example, childcare costs $16,945 a year. And that means that only 6.9% of families in California can afford to have children. This leaves like childbearing to only the richest 10% of people. And this can't be fixed if men are afraid of women. There's just this fear that there needs to be some sort of conversation going on, because this is honestly horrible. Let's see. Yeah, I think although the hashtag Me Too movement had great intentions and I love what they stand for, unfortunately, I think there are some severe unintended consequences that actually hurt women more than they do help women. So hopefully we'll be able to find a way to, you know, kind of come to a medium between supporting all women and just believing all women blindly. Because, you know, people do lie, and that's something that we need to acknowledge, and we need to figure out a way to support all women but not destroy all men because someone said something mean, or, well, not mean, someone accused them of doing something that they may not have done.
Okay, now my last wiki for this one. My name is Tobin Wajaga. The main topic that I will concentrate on throughout the comprehensive wiki are the reflection of the relationship with the institution that surrounds us and the mechanism that produces inequality that are not simple. I chose this topic because they were the most interesting materials that we covered throughout the semester, and these things were discussed in my groups. These main topics affect the lives of both men and women due to the decisions that are being made on a regular basis. One of them is the segregated bathrooms. One of them is the segregated bathroom, which the person is at an disadvantage if they do not classify themselves as males or females. Another one is discrimination in the workplace. Over the summer, I was fired by the city of Bridgeport due to the result of my disability and nationality. I am in the process of filing a lawsuit against the city of Bridgeport at the moment. Both of these subjects are emphasized thoroughly throughout the course of this textbook. The four main subjects that was reinforced in this topic were the genders in bathrooms today, institutional barriers, gender job discrimination, and endocentric pay scales. These things will be discussed further throughout the rest of my wiki, and I hope you enjoy it. Gender in today's bathroom. Gender segregation in toilet facilities has become a powerful norm in today's society. To most of us, using the bathroom for opposite sex is morally wrong. As in the Victorian era, sex segregation, segregated bathroom in today's society serves as a social function. Today, all states across the nation requires various bathrooms in public buildings and private businesses. Sex segregation of bathrooms also allow different people to handle their own privacy in handling their own businesses. For example, providing different restrooms for both males and females means that everyone must protect their private parts. And then institutional barriers. That's the second, that's going to lead to the next topic. The economy can be challenging for both parents to share to share. Real sharing often means both spouses needs to retreat into lower paying, less demanding occupation or part-time jobs. Even if a couple can afford to compromise income, marriages, and employment law makes sharing to be insurmountable as well. Most families have access with their health care insurance through their parent employers. However, people must be employed full-time to have health care benefits. The Social Security tax rewards the Social Security tax rewards breadwinners slash homemaker families. When couples discover that specialization is mandatory, they often focus on the career of their partners that earn bigger salaries and greater opportunity for advancement. Especially after the birth of a child, it often makes sense to prioritize a husband's profession over a wife's. The next topic I talk about is gendered job segregation. Gender job segregation is the practice of filling job positions with mostly males or female workers. Professions are socially constructed to imply that they are mostly qualified for stereotypical males and females. We discover great variation across culture because jobs are not naturally gendered. And the last topic I talked about was androcentric pay scale. The prestige and pay affiliated with jobs tend to follow the sex of the job. As women enters the occupation, status goes down. However, wages goes up for men as they enter their dream profession. And the androcentric pay scale is a powerful correlation between wages and the gender composition of the job. In fact, the gender composition of the job are the single largest contributor to the gender wage gap, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I'm done.
That was really interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.